Hi, this is Marlene, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Whether you're watching a video or listening to a podcast, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. Links to videos or MP3 files can be found on MiamiGhostChronicles.com. Go to MarlenePardo.com for information on new book releases. I narrate several podcast series that can be found on major podcast platforms and can also be listened to via Alexa, Sonos, and other home systems. Look for Supernatural Storytime for scary storytelling, Nightshade Diary for classic horror and adventure stories, Stories of the Supernatural for interviews with different guests on the show. If you want to get noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird, you can visit Strange Than Fiction Stories tab at MiamiGhostChronicles.com or find us on Blogspot. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi everybody, this is Marlene with Stories of the Supernatural. And as promised, finally I'm coming around and getting to the work of giving you guys a chicken video. Okay. And let's start off with strange discoveries. By the way, this is a converted shed that I use as a chicken coop. And this is what I found over here. Okay. By the way, things surface here from one day to the next that you don't see it. It's an iron, looks to me like an iron railroad spike, kind of bent. And yeah, that surfaced right there where I've got it placed over. And I'm telling you, I've been here for already a time. And yeah, and I've had like sometimes bones surface, and I'm going to assume that they were like animal bones. What can I say? But anyway, I'm going to show you my, as promised, my two sets of chicks. Okay. And this is this is Mama. She's getting, by the way, I hatched her. She was one of my first incubated ones that I hatched a while back when I was still living in South Florida. These are the babies. Okay, and this is the other one. He's a cutie. And by the way, this is one of those things where they might not all be hers, because most hens, when you leave them to their own devices, they have kind of like a communal egg laying area, and then somebody just finally that goes broody takes it over. But I have a feeling that not all of these might be hers. Okay, you can see I've got some black ones, and I've got a cutie pie there. Yes, Chuchi, you're so cute, you guys. Come here. Oh now it's the ring, huh? Little pitties. Hey, chicky. All right, cluckety cluck. Don't be mad. See, she doesn't get mad at me. She just goes, ah. They all kind of recognize I'm the food provider. And this is what's left of my two blue Andalusians. This one, I've got a home for the first one and the second one. These are the ones that I said that I lost to some weird animal that dug in under the crate. That one I'm already treating his backside. As a matter of fact, I got to spray him down in a little bit. The other one, I found a home for him. Because, again, when we get down to the too many roosters, too many boys. And this is Big Boy. Big Boy is blind. Okay, Big Boy, when he was a young rooster, got a bad eye infection, which I treated him for, and then he lost his sight because he got a fight with another rooster, and that was the end of his eyesight. So I keep him here. I let him out into a big cage every once in a while. Here, I want you to get an idea of how big Big Boy is. Okay, come here, Big Boy. Where's Big Boy? Come here, Bubba. It's okay. It's okay, sweetheart. Come here. Choop, choop, choop. And for those of you and his girl, I let her out also like every other day. And for you wondering why I keep him in a smaller cage, I have to do that because he knows where his water and his food is. And I've experimented trying to put him into a bigger area, and he just goes round and round. He loses track of where his food and his water is, so that's not good. So every once in a while I'll take him out during the middle of the day to a bigger cage and let him stretch out his wings, but it's either that or he starves to death. But he's happy there. Right, Big Boy? And he crows. And this is my last batch. Hi, you guys. And look, there's my naked neck back there. Hi, you guys. Again. Yes, yes, choo, 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 choo. And I got a gray one, beautiful gray one back there, like a smoky one. Okay, and I had to take Mama out of there because she started pecking on them. And sometimes some hens, from one day to the next, they go like wig out on their chicks. And the reason why I keep them in here is I got to keep them safe. When they're a little bit bigger, I start letting them out. But right now, Sparrowhawk could take these if I let them out. And I've learned the hard way. Let me see, hold on. And yeah, you guys. Yeah, those are my guineas right there. Get out of the way. Come on. I'm going to take you in here. And I've got, see, I'm the unapproved broody girl right here who decided she's going to just nest. Okay, and this is my frizzy rooster, Bruce Lee, and that's why I call him Bruce Lee, because he comes out and he knows me. Yes, yes, okay, I love you too. I love you too. And this is Twitchy. Twitchy, I've had him for like 5 years, and Twitchy has some type of central nervous problem where when he was younger he would go into spasm or have like seizures. And I used to keep him out in the flock, and then I had to put him away for like a year and restore him to health because some roosters got him and gouged like huge holes in the back of his head. And after a year I've been able to leave him out, and I don't know, he doesn't just gives off the non-rooster thing, and he exists here and he's fine, believe it or not. You see that red skin on him? That's normal for him, and he's very healthy. And he hasn't had the spasms anymore. He has not had those convulsions anymore. So that's, in other words, that's why I call him Twitchy. Right, Twitchy boy? Hey, Twitchy, Twitchy. And that one right there, that naked neck, that was my introduction to naked necks. She flew, this was when I was in South Florida, she flew into somebody's backyard. This was like a residential area. They thought she was sick. And they knew that I had chickens, and they said, do you want to come and get this weird chicken that we think it's really sick? And I thought when I saw her that it was sick too. I had never seen a naked neck. And I fell in love with the breed once I realized that they're so cool. And that's my girl. Yeah, my girl. All right, you guys, be good. And that's my little quack, quack, quack. And this is my little other frizzy girl. Come here, frizzy girl. By the way, I hatched all of these either on the, either in an incubator or, you know, hand raised them by Mom. I would say, with the exception of like, maybe 6 or 7 chickens, like those that I bought, like the blue Andalusians. Everything else I've gotten, I've raised. Bruce Lee, I love you too, Bruce Lee. Don't be mad at me, Bruce Lee. And here's my boy. This is my, look at him. Isn't he beautiful? Look at that. Look at his crown. Come here, baby. You're so cute. Come here. He was born when we were in South Florida. Yep. So as promised, I gave you a quick tour of my chicken coop, and you know, the rest of the flock, they're out there foraging. Here's my big Jersey girl. Out. Come here, my girl. See, we bought her. That was about maybe like 4 or 5 years ago as a young pullet. Okay. All right, Mama. And I'll give you the last one. This is my other rooster. And he's beautiful, and I let him out like every other day. I let him roam, but again, he lost sight of one eye because of an infection. And what happens is in Chicken Kingdom, especially if you're a rooster, if you've got any shortcoming, you're going to get blasted. You're going to get run away and everything. They're going to pick on you, the other rooster. So that's what happened to him. So I keep him here to keep him safe. And then like every other day, I let him go out there. And he sticks around close, and then by nighttime, he looks for me to put him back in his roost, because that's the problem. Once they're out there and I let them scavenge around, for him to come back in here, the other roosters won't let him even come in here. And here's my female guinea. The white one is, there's the white one. He's the male, she's the female. I just discovered, by the way, earlier today, a batch of like, I'm not kidding, like 22 eggs under one of my sheds. And a lot of them were guinea eggs, because that's what they do. They're wild things, kind of, even though I raised that one, the female guinea, with chicks. All right, guys, now I'm going to sign off. Talk to you soon. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural, and it's kind of a crazy day because just squirrely stuff going on with the connection, internet, video, audio, like a big giant. But anyway, let me get on to the good stuff. For those of you who saw the video portion of the show, you saw that I did a tour of my chicken yard. Okay, and I introduced you to some of the chickens that I've showed you before, my blind rooster and all my other girls and boys and everything in between. And for those of you on the podcast, I'm not going to put it in because without a video portion, it's not going to make any sense to you. Me giving you a tour of some of my chickens of the chicken kingdom. Okay, so before I forget, let me remind you all, please sign up for my newsletter on Substack. If you go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com, there's links there. You can go to mppellicer.com and you can sign up for my newsletter. I also have links to all the video versions of all the shows. It's not only Stories of the Supernatural, but Nightshade Diary, also Supernatural Storytime, and of course I'm doing eerie.news. You can find links there. Also, besides links to the podcast versions, you can also have links where you could listen to any of the podcasts without commercial interruptions. All you have to do is you could go and listen from your browser or upload it, or download the MP3 file if you want to listen to it from, no commercial interruptions. Otherwise, you can find me everywhere. iHeartRadio, Spotify, on Alexa, Amazon, everywhere. And I've got links there to directly to the program from if that's the podcast platform that you like. So don't forget about that. Let me get on to the good part and let me tell you a little bit about who I have today. And I'm so excited. Okay, her name is Valerie Evans, and she's an astrology instructor and consultant. Okay, she teaches astrologers and astrology enthusiasts how to analyze the scene of a crime and how to find a missing person, okay, using timestamp and studying the energy of that minute in time as a method of investigation. All right. Besides criminal investigations, missing person cases, she could do it also with any ongoing thing, that she's got, I imagine, the information as far as, whatchamacallit, the birth, the birth information. All right. But
Sure.
let's get talking to her. How are you doing today, Valerie?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
No, on the contrary, it is my pleasure. And we were already talking. I was like, man, I got to stop talking to her now because I want to. Let me ask you, how did you get involved with this?
Well, I was going through my own discovery process with astrology. And because I guess my personality, I'm always thinking of different ways to apply things. And I think, stumbled onto this book on serial killers and their
Okay.
birth charts. And that really led me to the next level, which was how you can construct the scene of a crime, look at it,
Mm-hmm.
decode it, and get practical information in order to help find new clues. And there were quite a few years in between there from looking at serial killers' birth charts, like Ted Bundy and so many others. But from there, it took on something that I wasn't expecting, and I had all this information, and I had spreadsheets, and I realized I need to put all of this together and
Mm-hmm.
write a book and see where it takes me.
Let me ask you something. Were you surprised? Let's go with Ted Bundy. That
Yes.
kind of, we have information on his childhood and
Mm.
how he got into the basically killing and what he got executed. And when you did his chart, did those things match up? Is that how you realized? Wow.
Absolutely, you can see everything.
Okay.
You can see how he died. You can see what his energy was, where he had a pension. He had to go near colleges in certain circumstances at certain
Right.
times of life. His destiny was to create this chaos,
Okay.
and so you start to think a little bit more deeply and philosophically about who are we, are what is our purpose, do
Okay.
we have a choice? And I'm starting to get to the point where I don't know if we have that much of a choice. I really don't. You can resist all you want, but there's a path that you're taking, and there's a reason that you're here to do something. So when you see The other day I was putting on my Instagram a comparison between Nixon
Mm-hmm.
and um, John Wayne Bobbitt,
Okay.
and whose wife cut off his sexual
Of all the
appendage.
things that somebody can be remembered for, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And there were similarities,
Really?
which had to do with an appendage that would be what would it would center in their life. It would be a major area, and what because they both had a very strong Pluto influence, and
Okay.
Pluto represents in crime charts and in any chart a sexual appendage or a penis.
Okay.
And so what was Nixon called? He was called
Trick.
Tricky,
Yeah, exactly.
and Pluto was in his 10th house of career, so that's what he would be known for.
Okay.
So that's an example, but in John Wayne Bobbitt's case, his was, I believe it was in the fourth, which is where his was cut off at home in the fourth house.
Yes.
So when you start seeing these roadmaps of people, you start to think less viscerally, is I guess the word is less
Mm-hmm.
harshly about these people. I think some of us do anyway.
Let me ask you what you said, that thing about Bundy, that you said, oh, I see him with chaos. In other words, he was going to create chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go to, that argument that they always have of nature versus nurture.
Yes.
Could,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody will say with that chart, would the nurture, let's say, part of it is nature, could he have done chaos in any other way besides killing people, you think? Or was it
Uh,
just,
I I think so. His roadmap, what was for me most prevalent was his revenge towards women. That's what was the engine for him that drove him, and you can clearly see that he needed that revenge. He needed to feed it. But I do think, yes, that there were some issues you can see in the home, and I believe Scorpio was. I don't know, it played a part. So, and Scorpio is a killer. It's a very harsh sign to have
mm-hmm.
around the fourth house, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so he absolutely had a hard time. But was that his destiny? Was his roadmap that, yes, you're going to be put in this terrible situation where um, you grow up and your real mother is not there. I believe was that his
No,
grandmother.
what happened, and I was about to ask you this, but but I'm gonna. I was reading up on him, and his mom said that she had gotten pregnant. She had gone off to one of the, back then they had those unwed mother things that you went to like a home and you had your baby. She
Mhm.
had gone off. She was 20 years old to have a baby, and I guess she was going to put him up for adoption. At the last minute, her dad tells her, "No, come back, bring the baby with you." Now there's a rumor, and again, this could go either way. She claimed that she had been seduced by a soldier. He was born around, World War II, and abandoned. In other words, seduction, abandonment. There's another
Mhm.
rumor that says that he was a product of incest between her and her father. Okay. She then
That's not.
got married, had three more kids, but she always kept him, with her. In other words, she,
Mhm.
um, and of course, you look at pictures and they all look like nice little kids and stuff like that, but you never know what went on behind closed doors. You know,
Exactly.
if it started with maybe the way of he was conceived, if there is any truth to that, or
Mhm.
let's face it, maybe let's face it, it's a tough decision. You're pregnant back at this in the 1940s, and somebody's basically abandoned you.
Yeah,
So,
it definitely. His anger grew at his childhood during his
mm-hmm,
childhood years. So you are a seed on this earth, and the seed is already predetermined for you. So it certainly takes a lot of effort to go against what you were meant to do.
right, and that's why I think it's like that, predestination versus how much, we always have that thought about free will, that You always have free
Absolutely.
will, but then of course you're saying, okay, but maybe you're going to be pointed in a certain direction or find yourself in certain circumstances.
Yeah,
And
and one thing, to your point is, you can find people's destiny for the year
mm-hmm,
if you look at your solar chart. And so I started doing a study for my solar chart, and this is the chart between birthdays. That's your solar year.
mm-hmm,
Uh, so I was born in February, so February to February,
okay,
and it plays out what's going to happen. And I I don't know, maybe I'm different than everybody else, but there are years when I think people probably thought of me as not a good person, maybe a troublemaker, things that I might not be too proud of. So I
okay,
looked at those years and those solar years, and they were extremely poorly aspected. Um,
okay,
it showed that people were not going to like me that year. That would be the energy, and that I would return that energy. So that, I think, might be a little bit of a flavor, looking at your solar year to see how your energy is going to translate into society.
let me, well, especially, let me ask you, do you think it's wise to know that, or is it, or could it be turned into a self-fulfilling prophecy?
I thought before that it could turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy, but I want to know. I like to
Okay,
know. I want to know who. I want to know what to expect and who to avoid.
okay,
And I just had I had a client that wrote me. She is from Indonesia. We talked 2 weeks ago, and I don't like to scare people. I really don't. But
okay,
if they want to get some advice on their year on what to avoid, I'm going to tell them. And in this case, I told her, it looks like you're going to do great financially, but there's somebody who wants it. And I'm going to say, it looks like a friend. A friend might, I don't know how, because I didn't know what kind of business she had. I didn't know it was a
mm-hmm,
small, I didn't know anything. But I said, all I want you to do is just look at the books and just protect yourself. That's all. Get an accountant if possible. Okay. Then Monday morning, she texts me and says, I'm at the police station. I found my friend stealing from me. And so
oh,
she was vigilant, and she caught this girl taking her pottery and jewelry from her store and selling it online. So because she knew that, she was able to protect herself. So that would be a success story in a sense.
right,
But of course, you don't want people being afraid to leave their house or
right,
to travel, or because sometimes it says that now in Aaliyah's chart,
uh-huh,
her solar chart, the year that she died in the plane crash,
okay,
there was a lot of affliction in traveling abroad, traveling
okay,
outside the U.S. And as we know, she had the plane crash.
yes,
So yeah, so it's. Do you want to read the energy coming up,
okay.
or
Let me ask you this because I know people out there thinking. Let's say, like you said, one thing is here's your chart. This is the time and date you were born. But then you look and if let's say she would have come to you and you say, you know what, this is a bad year or a bad month or a bad whatever for travel, especially air travel.
yeah?
If somebody like you or you would have given her that warning and she wouldn't have gone, but however, it's in her chart, would could that have been avoided or delayed, or was it that's it? You're gonna get on that plane no matter what.
Well, you get into the discussion of playing God, I guess,
Right.
and avoiding those things. Some people will say that you can delay it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still coming for you.
Right.
So I want to say that we are rewarded if
Mm-hmm.
we know the code. If
Okay.
we know how to read the sky, we can have an advantage.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Right. And you see where I'm going with this. It's like, was this something that no matter what, and I know that, sometimes you can't escape death. It comes for all of us. But then
Yeah,
you
yeah.
you know, you hear about people, and let's use the plane ride, but it could happen to anything. Those people that have those gut feelings or a bad dream or something, and they don't get on the plane.
Mhm.
And they don't understand why, but they basically, it saves their lives and everybody else went down. And if anybody else had a bad feeling, it's too late because they got on the plane and they dismissed it as their imagination.
That's a great example because that is probably in their chart. Probably shows that their intuition is life-saving in some way.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a chicken or the egg kind of thing.
Right. Exactly. Like exactly. Is it, were you gonna were you gonna get out of it anyway? You know, maybe you took a ride and it got there late, for example, and you missed your plane. Oops.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. So that's so, that to me is so interesting. And we were talking also that you look at, not only as far as crime, certain cases or cold cases or anything like that.
Mhm.
Have you come across anything that you were really surprised at beyond? Because, sometimes certain cases, certain information is put out in the media, whether it's
Yes.
a big case or not, whether it's a cold case or not. Have you ever come across something you're like, wow, this is beyond what's generally known out there about this?
All the time, and it's
Yeah.
frustrating because we will get, and I had an interview with I was talking to a psychic detective today. He's pretty well known in his community, and we get frustrated sometimes because people will just say things like, well, you were wrong, or this or that, and it's something that comes with the territory,
Okay.
but it's usually a reaction to something immediately. But the lesson is patience, because 6 months, a year later, 2 years later,
Okay.
the chart ends up telling us that no, this is how it really was. And unfortunately, sometimes we see that the police are not sometimes
Mm-hmm.
are not really giving uh, the full information for whatever reason. So
Right.
that can be frustrating.
Well, I've heard that sometimes, and I don't know if they still do it, that they'll withhold like certain type of information because they say sometimes for some weird reason people confess to crimes that they didn't commit.
That is fascinating to me. Yes, and
And like if you fudge, in other words, unless you know this particular thing about the crime, they can kind of know, okay, you're not the one that did it.
yes, and I address that in my book too, and that's a false confession,
Yeah.
and that is it, it's in the crime chart that somebody is going to want to do that. It's the energy. It might be because of the police. They're bullying, or the person wants notoriety, or they're
Mm-hmm.
just mentally not
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
strong. But yeah, you can definitely see something in the charts across the board when you'll notice. Oh, you're probably going to get a false confession for
Right.
this.
Especially, I've seen that when these cases get, like you said, attention, they become notorious or notoriety. It's like
Hmm.
for some reason you're like, are you realize what you're doing? That spotlight, and I know there's a flavor of mental illness going on there somewhere, where they confess, and sometimes from what I understand, this is when the police withhold certain evidence or either about the body or the method or something, just so they could discount people that come forward and want to insert themselves into it.
Oh yeah, and it's wild, and to imagine that, uh, law enforcement gets 4,000 tips, and
Yes.
it's like you just you can't get your head around having to manage that much information.
Yes.
And so these charts, when you see them, the crime charts, you can see if the police will be successful or not, if they'll
Okay.
get help, or and how long it takes them to solve the crime.
Really. Let me ask you,
Mhm.
when you do, okay, when it's something like that, what do you use? The date that the crime was committed, or how does that work?
Yes. The closest that the time was committed is the best.
Okay.
But sometimes we don't have that. We
Mm-hmm.
also use the CCTV time.
Okay.
That's also a little tricky too, because I can't tell you how many times that CCTV cameras are wrong. So you have
Right.
to make sure that that's right.
Right.
And sometimes they don't change it for, daylight savings time. So and we can also look at a last text time. So if somebody doesn't know any
Okay.
information, I can say, well, when was the last time you called them, or exchanged some type of communication with them. And then that's when you can easily draw the chart online. There's
Mm-hmm.
a calculator that you use, which was never available before. And so
Okay.
modern technology has allowed that. Before, it used to be these old 90-year-old sages who would do these calculations, and it would take many days to do, and
Okay.
now it takes literally 5 seconds. So
I can imagine. Sure. I can. It's like, okay, let me like with the. Yeah, that must have been a long process,
it
because yeah,
was.
I was thinking, okay, some, and of course, like you said, CCTV. That's all part of technology and texting and things of this
Mhm.
nature.
Yeah, yeah. And what it is it draws a map of the sky, and astrologers, forensic astrologers, they actually read that language and they see what was happening at that moment. So you can see, was it happening in the area where the victim was familiar, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
it was where it was in a car. So many times you can see how crimes happen in a car.
Sure.
Or so you can really read who, what, when, where, why. And I consider myself a researcher. um, I do like to work with other astrologers.
Mm-hmm.
It's best if you work with a team, because I might be off one day and I'm like, oh, I feel like I got 4 clues.
Right.
And then I'll work with 2 other astrologers and they'll tell me, well, you didn't get this, or this. And it's like, oh my God, because there's so much information. And it's really, it's, it's a thought process that's best,
Let me ask you,
group.
how would you, let's say, how, how sometimes they'll, these, and I'm talking, these are not cold cases, these are frigid cases, where they basically, it's a Jane Doe or John Doe, skeletal remains. There's no CCTV, no modern technology, nothing. What do you use? The date that let's say the body was discovered? And, and sometimes they'll say, we're really not sure how long this person has been here. Is there
It
any
is
way to do
very,
anything with that?
it's very tough. I want to get better at it.
Okay.
And I tend to gravitate towards the cases that are,
Okay.
after 2005 when we texted. But yeah, the cold cases would be, last time somebody talked to them, probably, or when they were discovered. We can certainly get information from that.
Right. Okay. How sometimes they're basically, and I tell everybody, because sometimes I've worked on, I don't know if you're familiar with the Doe Network or Name Us, which is, they've got
Oh,
like
yes.
the rosters of either missing people or unidentified or cold cases.
Mm-hmm.
And it's incredible because, I know a lot of times the police in the jurisdiction where they were found, which doesn't mean that's where they're missing from, but anyway, they immediately look at missing persons report. And you'd be
Mm-hmm.
surprised how many of these victims remain identified, because nobody's ever reported them missing. Like, they're, for lack of a better word, they're throwaways,
I know, it's awful.
where the family has never said, or a friend has ever called the police and said, hey, you know what? I haven't heard or seen this person a week, a month, a year. So they have no way to match it to,
I know. It,
do, is this
It is
person?
one of the most challenging cases, I would say,
Okay.
but you can still look and see, how to get information that helps the police.
Yeah, I
And
know. I know that there's people that have been doing some really good work. It takes a lot of people. When they're off time, they basically do the legwork. And you pointed it out. Sometimes some of these police departments, especially if it's a smaller department, they get overwhelmed with cases.
yeah,
And if
it,
there's no squeaky wheel, or somebody calling, hey, have you done this? They kind of fall by the wayside.
yeah. And the other thing that's sad to me, and something I try to prioritize, is when there's a drug addict or a prostitute, or somebody who
Mm-hmm.
has had a crime committed. The police often, at least traditionally or historically, have just thrown them the information away and not really focused
Oh,
on it.
it's like they consider it risky lifestyle. The potential person that killed them could be a cast of thousands. Let's say a prostitute. It
Exactly.
could have been. Yeah, right. Okay.
No,
And I know exactly what you mean. That nobody really pushes hard on trying to get information on it.
No, and it's really sad because the families really suffer because of that,
Yeah.
and it's important to give them closure no matter what. And many times, these people that have these crimes committed against them, these victims, they've
Mhm.
fallen on hard times. They
Oh yeah.
weren't that to begin with. They were just desperate. So
Right. No, no, they're soft targets, and unfortunately, a lot of these killers, they choose them just precisely for that reason, because they know there's not going to be anybody worried or asking questions about what happened to so and so. Why haven't I seen so and so? They, they've lost touch sometimes with their family of origin. Even if they're somewhere in the background. So yeah, they I hate to say it, in some cases they get like a bullseye on them. And what is it, like the Green River Killer and all these, they kill a
oh,
bunch of them before somebody says, "Whoa, we got to stop this. We got to figure out who's doing this."
I
Like,
know
how
it's
many did he go
amazing.
through? Like 50 something, and they say they could be more.
Oh yeah, I think there were over 100,
Yeah, it was
110
like,
or something like that
yeah,
they know of.
right. And,
Yeah.
and people don't realize that, even though they some
No,
of
I'm
these
sorry, you're right.
effect.
That's the Green River Killer. I'm thinking of the Golden
Oh,
State.
I love that. I loved it when they got him on DNA. Yay!
Oh,
Because they
it's
had given up on this guy, and that at some point it took them a while to realize that they were not looking at a burglar, a rapist, and a murderer. It was the same person,
mhm.
and that familial DNA hookup got him.
Oh, I know. It's so exciting, and I hope it continues
Well,
to grow in practice.
well, you know what? The reason I say that is I'm thinking of, like you just said before, these poor families
Hmm.
that they've never, at least, I mean, it's obviously it's not going to bring back somebody that's been murdered, but at
Hmm.
least you have that satisfaction of saying this is the person that did it, and
Exactly.
now they're it's justice is going to be served.
Hmm. That's
Okay,
that's all we want, and to protect other people
of
potentially.
course. Even
Yeah.
though, what, as they get older,
Hmm.
they stop doing that. It's like all of a sudden they realize, I
They
don't want to
do.
spend the rest of my life in a jail, so I'm getting old.
Yep. They have a different, and everyone has a different chapters in their
Yeah,
lives. So you are probably not the person you were 20 years ago. And
sure.
so, yeah, it's very unlikely in many cases that it's going to happen their entire life. They just stop.
Well, this guy was not stupid by any
Mm.
stretch, but remember, he was committing crimes in the 70s and 80s, and he's not stupid, which he's saying, the advances they've done now with forensics,
Mhm.
I'll get caught right away. Versus back
Exactly.
then.
Yeah, most people are not smart enough now to they can watch all of the shows that they want, but they miss that one part that gets them. And especially right now, and this has helped us as
Mm-hmm.
astrologers, there's so many CCTV cameras around.
Yes.
So and that can help us with the time, which is what we're looking for.
Let me ask you, do you, um, I don't know if it's almost like, and I guess it's when obviously when we see, even though sometimes you see kids that kill, I'm not saying, but let's go where you see the adult, because I think sometimes it's real hard for somebody to see a child or an adolescent and think this person is going to be a scourge on society,
Oh, I know.
because they're
And
going to do these horrific things.
I did a book report when I was in high school, and
Okay.
my father was in law enforcement. He was in the
Okay.
FBI, and he worked with John Douglas, the behavioral profiler.
Okay.
And I'll never forget. I taped him. I wish I kept that tape, but and of course I got an A on my book report on
Yeah,
serial
but
killers. And I will never forget, and I was like 16 years old. He said, Ingrid, oh, I always do
okay,
that.
don't worry about
Cut that
it. All right,
out.
don't worry.
He said, Valerie.
Okay.
He said, Valerie, some people were just born bad.
Yeah.
And I've always taken that, and that actually it has to do with the chart. because it backs up the chart in a sense, because there are certain things that people are
Mm-hmm.
born with, and they will always be bullies. They will
Yes.
always be killers. They can't do anything about it, and that's why he supported the death penalty.
Yeah. And I know a lot of
When
people. And you know, do you think that a chart will reflect if somebody's a psychopath?
Absolutely, oh yes, yes.
Okay.
It can be. It has to do with a lot of energy in Scorpio,
Mm-hmm.
Leo, which was the case for Ted Bundy. There are
Okay.
also degrees too. I teach the degree theory, and what we have a lot of baby astrologers, they call them right now, where they're still into sun signs. They're really getting into the top three, which is your moon, your rising sign, and your sun. But soon, and I'm starting to see this with demand on my site, which has a list of degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People are going to start getting wind of the degrees, and that's where you get a lot of your energy manifesting. So there are good degrees and there are bad degrees. So the sun or Saturn represents your father or father figure. If that's at 18 degrees, and many times it can show that your father was maybe a negative energy in your life.
Okay.
So 2 degrees means that you'll be very good at what you do in that particular instance. If it's in Aries, it shows that you'll be a top athlete. Could mean that you're a top philosopher that will be published for centuries.
Okay.
So, or a top comedian. And so there are these degrees. And so if you're born when these planets are at, at the position of certain degrees, that's what it's almost like you're in an oven and you're being baked
Okay.
with that energy. So it's hard to get out of that energy.
Right, right. And you know, I tell people, you know, everybody when you say the word psychopath, everybody immediately goes to a serial killer. But there's psychopaths that, you know, they don't have a conscience or remorse, but they may not be violent. But these are the people that sometimes there'll be, you know, bosses. I'm going to use the boss thing because I think that
Yeah.
they're just very controlling people and don't care about running people over.
And I think of that girl who I actually used to work out with her, not with her, but in the same Y up in Massachusetts. She, I guess, she was convicted of bullying her boyfriend into committing
Oh
suicide.
my God, when I hear that, that's like horrendous.
Yeah, so there's gray area, there's nuance,
Yes, yes.
and so
People don't
that's.
realize that psychopaths, you don't necessarily have to go around like with a butcher knife killing people.
Mhm.
You could be, let's say, one of these bosses that wrecks people's careers or lives, or the neighbor that just is like making life impossible. The BTK killer without the killing, you know, how he was going around as a code enforcement, making everybody's
Exactly.
life miserable.
And
Um,
I am I'm writing my second book, and it has to do with workplace bullies.
oh my God, that's going to be excellent. I can tell already.
And how you can tell is you can pull the time from a certain number of different moments of your interview time,
Mm-hmm.
um, your hiring date, your first day of work, and
Really?
you can see. And some of the examples I use are Ann Curry, and a lot of news people, because you know what their first day was. Deborah Norville,
Right, right.
um, and so they're even presidents, you know what their first day of work is. It's the
Uh-huh.
inauguration. You can
Yes.
tell what their presidency is going to be like.
Okay.
So it's fascinating to be able to see if you're going to have, as an example, a workplace bully. And that's usually going to have to do with Mars. They like to cut. Mars is cutting weapon, aggression, and
Mm-hmm.
um, and also Saturn, because Saturn stops you from doing something. It blocks you. Oh, you want to be successful, do you? Well, guess what?
Okay.
So you have these poor aspects in, say, a chart for, your interview date. It's probably not going to work out so well.
So you're telling me that let's say the interview date, if one day versus another, one could be more favorable.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
exactly. You like, for instance, you don't want in the 12th house. You
Mm-hmm.
don't want planets in the 12th house in this chart. For any chart that you pull, because there are a few, like you might have a first interview, a second interview,
Right.
then you're going to have, when they send you the acceptance letter, or when you sign it, and then the first day. But what's really interesting is, say those are 4 times, right? They all are connected. You can see how they all have the same theme. And it's really wild, even if they're days or weeks apart.
That
So
is so
I
interesting.
know. And if you see uh, planets in the 12th house, you are going to have hidden enemies.
Let me ask you,
And
so if somebody was, let's say, here they're going to jump ship, let's say their career, they're going to go off, and
mhm,
you would probably give them a great consult as far as where, when, and where, or how, and as far as what would be the best thing for them.
absolutely. And, if maybe the money isn't going to be so great this year, but hang tight, because next year something is going to happen. You might
Yes.
get syndicated in the news media, using that as an example. And I use Oprah Winfrey as an
Mm-hmm.
example. That first time when she was a reporter, she got demoted. And so there were a few charts that she had in order to get it right.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly.
Now, they talk about Mercury retrograde, and that is a really main theme in the work that I do, because it usually means failure. Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and you don't generally want to start something during Mercury retrograde. But in Oprah Winfrey's chart and in Kelly Ripa's chart, they both started a job during Mercury retrograde, and long-term jobs. So, excuse me. So I was thinking, why? And then I remembered that the rule of Mercury retrograde is, if you're just revising something, then it's very strong and very positive. And so
Okay.
they had already worked for ABC, and
Okay.
they were just changing the the platform
Mm-hmm.
that they were, Kelly Ripa was a soap opera actress, now a talk show host, and then Oprah Winfrey was a reporter. Then she became a talk show host. So in their cases, they used it in a good way. And to apply to crime charts, I
Okay.
have on my site lots of case studies on Mercury retrograde, and how when criminals want to do, when they want to succeed, they usually don't. If they want to rob something, whatever it is, it will probably haunt them the rest of their life.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's not a good idea. Now, OJ, he committed his crime during Mercury retrograde.
Really?
He did. Now, he had abused before, so it wasn't the first time. You can think of it
Yes.
that way. But at the same time, it did haunt him for the rest of his life, and uh,
Right.
it, it was it didn't go well for him. If you're of the mind that he was actually guilty. So,
Valerie,
but
have you ever come across anybody else? That's so fascinating. Anybody that's ever been caught or brought to trial, that when you looked at the date that they committed, let's say the crime that they were actually taken to court for, was it in Mercury retrograde?
yeah, I had a client actually who was adamant that I was wrong. It was a high profile case. It
Mm-hmm.
was a Saudi who got busted, and this was a man from Saudi, and he just wanted to know personal report. But we started talking about his friend, and he's like, "There's no way. Let me tell you, he's behind bars in New York, uh, and it's high profile. There is no way that he's going to get out of this." And I said, "You just wait." And sure enough, and I think there was something political that happened.
Mm-hmm.
They dropped the charges, which was absolutely unbelievable. And
Okay.
so, on the good side, if something terrible is happening to you, if it's Mercury retrograde, then that could be a good thing. So you can use it
Right.
to
As
your
far
advantage.
as for the system or the person that's going after you, if they started something, if you're, in other words, if you're at the receiving end of whatever is going on, it might work in your
Exactly.
favor. Okay. That is
Yeah,
so
if
interesting.
somebody's writing you up, and I'll never forget, I got pulled over during Mercury
You
retrograde.
imagine you were reading my mind. I was going, maybe
Yep.
that's a decent time to get a
And,
traffic to my
and yeah,
ticket.
exactly. And this was around the time where I was still testing it out. Like I was like, I wasn't really 100% and always in research mode.
Uh
So
huh.
I'm watching him walk up to my car and I'm like, it's not going to go well for him if this is true. And
Mm-hmm.
so he goes back and of course takes forever and comes back and he says, I can't give you a ticket. My computer isn't allowing me to give the ticket. So you get a free pass today. And I was like, that was it for me.
And you're like, okay. Oh, I'm thinking about, all right, now let me ask you in a case like that, but let's say you do get the ticket, all
Hmm.
right? And let's say you schedule to take it to court.
Hmm.
What's going to impact it? The day you got the ticket or the date that it goes to court?
The first, I would say the day you got the ticket. Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right.
And it's likely now, if it's still in retrograde and you have to go to court, it's likely it'll be postponed or something
Okay.
will fall through.
Okay.
Hmm.
So if anybody is out there, you get a ticket, we'll find out if it's a Mercury retrograde.
Exactly. Now,
Yeah.
Mercury retrograde can also be really good too, because uh, it's a it's the universe's way of saying, don't go anywhere, do not travel.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the time. This is the time to look back and rewind and look through your stuff. Okay, look through your life.
Okay.
So a practical way of using it might be to call your cell phone provider or a credit card or and find out if they can give you a deal or just go through it again,
Okay.
and you'll be amazed that something was wrong, that they're fixing. You
Okay.
might get a better rate, that kind of thing. So if you wanted to use it in a practical way.
Okay. And like you said, don't start something like a project. What would you say? Okay, do research, but don't actually start it, or
Yes, exactly. And it's
okay.
about the timestamp that you use. So if I think that I'm going to want to do something during retrograde and it's before that,
Mm-hmm.
I'll open up a document and
Okay.
I'll just leave it blank. And
All
then when
right.
I want to write things during retrograde, I'll just write that during in that document. So,
That's exactly what I was going to ask you.
mhm.
What do you consider is the beginning of something? But let's say a project. Let's say something that you're going to write. That's the
Mhm.
first step of the inception of that project. Is that
Yes,
what would be the considered the timestamp, like you said?
exactly. Anything new that you just open up, a
Okay.
new endeavor that you're excited about,
Mm-hmm.
forcing yourself, let's face it, it's not easy to force yourself to procrastinate, especially the very motivated people of the world.
Right.
For me, I'm a Pisces. I'm okay with it.
Right. No. No. But sometimes people get excited. They got this great idea. Like, oh, I want to do that. I want to do that. Or that's great.
And I found that Leos tend to be like that.
Okay.
And Leos are ruled by the sun, and the sun is the closest. Like, I think it's all about magnetic energy. We're amidst magnets,
Mm-hmm.
and Mercury is closest to the sun of all the planet. I should say, sun is the closest to Mercury of all the
Okay.
planets. And so, and I think there must be, and also people are born during Mercury retrograde, and
Okay.
those people tend to get very excited to do things. It still doesn't work out for them. So there are certain people. There's a percentage of people who want to do this. Meghan Markle's one of those people.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
She started her, and I closed my eyes and just shook my head when she started her, very excitedly. She started her it was I think it was her website, but it was also Instagram. I think it was whatever platform she was using,
Okay.
and it went crazy. So she got like 1 million followers and everything, but it was fine for about 6 or 9 months, and then they were forced to shut it down, if you'll
Okay.
recall.
Okay. I did
um,
hear something about
it
that.
it was Sussex something, and
Okay.
they had to close it down because the Queen said so.
Hey, there you
So I
go.
knew it was coming. I knew it was
Yeah.
coming.
You want to marry into the royal family. There you go. When that thing
Exactly.
about the travel,
Hmm.
if you make the travel arrangements, but it's not Mercury retrograde, but you're going to travel, the actual date of the travel is Mercury retrograde. Are you saved because you did it or
No,
planned it or paid for it? No.
nope. The best thing to do is plan it when Mercury is direct, and
Mm-hmm.
take it when Mercury is direct.
Okay.
That you're going to have the best time. People tend to get in arguments.
Okay.
There's obviously there's the little. I've seen people have a fine time during Mercury
Mm-hmm.
retrograde, but there might be they miss their flight. I know somebody who got married this past month
Mm-hmm.
during Mercury retrograde, and all the flights that they had and their guest had, I wouldn't say all of them, but a good amount canceled.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, and I've read about that. You're right.
so it's what's going to happen.
Yeah, something to think about for the planners.
Mhm.
That nowadays. Now, if there's something, let's go down to the if there's something let's say let's go with Mercury retrograde that's unavoidable. Something like I can't wait. How long is Mercury retrograde? A few weeks, a couple of weeks, or how long is
It's
it?
tough. Yeah, it comes 3 times a year. It's usually 2 to 3 weeks,
Okay.
and then there's shade too. So a lot of times you get that, and I'll get calls about people who need to go into surgery. And
Right.
I'll give you an example. I told this one, it was a gentleman I was talking to, and he said, I have to, my wisdom teeth, I got to get them out. They're infected, they hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, if there's any way you can just medicate, nope, can't do it. So what had happened was he'd had the surgery, and everything was fine, but his tongue was numb. And a year later, it was still numb. So
Oh,
there are, there are repercussions. You're going to
okay.
suffer if you don't sacrifice.
Okay, yeah, there's something that's going to be in there at the end. And I understand what he was describing. That sounds to me like I'd probably like pull him, I can't take
I
it. I can't have I but yeah, I see what you're saying, that you get a little
know.
extra that you don't like that goes with it.
Exactly. There's always going to be something that you're not going to like, and surgery dates are big. That's what many
Mm-hmm.
astrologers are hired for these days, and you have to be very careful. You can't do surgery during a void of course moon.
Okay.
You can't. You can, but you shouldn't. You should wait for moon to wane because you'll
Okay.
have less blood flow. Medical astrology is just huge right now. It's
Okay.
really, and that's a whole other niche.
And I'm
But
wondering, I wonder, how you have that conversation with your doctor. Well, doc,
oh, I
I
mean,
want you to have it at this date at this time, and he'll look at you or she'll look at you and go, huh?
yeah, oh yeah, and they'll traditional medical people in the health industry, they don't care about void of course moon, but
Wow.
you're going to care, which is what happened a couple of weeks ago. One of my clients had to get chemo,
Okay.
and I really tried to push to get him to reschedule, and he's like, nope. So he has to wait 2 hours, which is not normal for this group and this procedure. And then he found out that he didn't get the correct treatment.
Okay.
So they had to give him some additional things, and they didn't. So, you know, you
Right.
have to
Things get
confident.
complicated, huh?
Yeah, you'll get complications. Absolutely.
So let me ask you. Let's say, do you do something? Let's say for a year, in overall, not a personalized one, where you could
Hmm.
look at a year and
Hmm.
say this is going to be a good year, so year, or good in this area but bad in this one, or
You're talking about mundane astrology, like the world, or like a
well,
person.
let's say. Well, yeah, let's say where you live, let's say in the United States. And I know that's why I'm saying I know that God, because you're thinking, okay, something could go really great in one part of the world, and then in the other side, it's like,
Yeah.
and what would you do? Or I mean, I imagine how I'm trying to think, how would you do something like that?
Learn how to sell stocks short. Prepare for the worst. And what
Okay,
does that mean? And that's interesting because a lot of astrologers right now are saying, these next 3, 4, 5 years are going to be tough.
right,
They're not
and
going to be a bed of roses.
mm-hmm,
But what do people do when when things aren't, a renaissance. In fact, it's interesting how Beyonce is coming out with an album called Renaissance.
Okay.
And so I don't see it being a renaissance for many groups of people, but you ask yourself, okay, so if times are going to get difficult, how can I prepare myself? But yeah, I think that that's the consensus mostly, which is we're going to be pinching pennies for a while.
Right. And I tell everybody, and I guess part of it is also sometimes we've gotten a little bit jaded. I remember when Y2K was coming around,
Hmm.
that everybody that were saying, not astrologers, but overall, everything was going to, because the computers, everything was computerized at that
Well,
point. It
there was
was,
a lot of fear, a lot of
and
fear.
nothing was, for some reason, these computers were not going to be able to recognize the 2000 and everything was going to go, nothing
Yeah,
happened. you know?
nothing happened. That's a good point too. Yeah, and I, I hope
And
that's
no,
the
I'm
case.
not, I'm not by any, I'm not discounting what you're saying, but I'm just saying that sometimes people, our society that we're, and I'm going to say we're very used to having it nice. You know what I'm saying?
We are, we are. I remember being a kid, I guess in my teenage years, and taking a history class or whatever, and thinking to myself, God, what was it like back? And not like it's going to be like this, but what was it like when everybody was high on the hog in the 20s, and
Mm-hmm.
then suddenly everything was flipped
Yeah.
180? And we're seeing that already. We're seeing a lot of people just being in shock, and it does build a character. It
Yeah.
does, by taking things away, we learn what's most important. So that might be one of the lessons that we're here to learn when we're on Earth.
Yeah.
And
People don't
what would
realize when they had that stock market crash in 1929. Okay, that there were, you know, you hear these stories of some of these financiers jumping to their deaths off, you know, over on Wall Street because they were basically wiped out. And then, of course, we went into the Great Depression.
Mhm.
And it was
Yeah,
like, it was, from what I understand, I believe it was like 25% of the population was unemployed, and the other 75%. But even then, I don't think we would ever realize what it would be if we had a 25% unemployment rate involuntarily. How's that?
exactly.
It was a
Yeah.
very difficult time, and we're looking at what, about 100 years later. We've everybody, the majority of people that lived during those times are long gone.
They are, yeah. I really try to think on a deep level on what is all this for, and then
Mm-hmm.
I always go back to the um, the phrase "Age of Aquarius."
Yes.
What is happening right now? Well, we are being forced into, I don't know about forced, but we are moving into the age of Aquarius. And what does the age of Aquarius mean? Well, it means living online. It means depending on electronics and the future of technology. So what's happening? Well, we have this terrible plague. Everyone moves out into the country.
Mm-hmm.
They um, they telecommute,
Right.
and now what's happening? Everybody feels a little bit better. They're going back into the office. Well, now gas prices are going up.
God,
So
that's
now
another one. Yeah.
people, yeah. So now what's happening? You've got all these people living out in the country,
Mm-hmm.
and now gas prices are the way they are. So they're staying out there. They're not going to come in
Mm-hmm.
commuting. So what does that forces the moving on online even more? And I think that's really the end game here is over these next few years for us to really develop our lives to really be the Jetsons in every
Yeah.
way, shape, and form, whether we like it or not.
And you hope you have a good Wi-Fi signal. You know, the reason I live, you know, I was born and raised in Miami in South Florida, and I moved out here like it's gonna be a year. I live out in the sticks. It's a little town in North Florida. It's only got 5,000
Oh,
inhabitants,
really? Oh, wow.
and you know, uh, being used to like, oh, Wi-Fi. My Wi-Fi signal is great all the time. Yeah, all right. You know, I went through kind of like a culture shock, and I have to drive miles to get to a, just like a supermarket, like a regular supermarket.
Yeah. So you're already skilled in that, and
Oh
now
yeah, well
the rest
you
of the population.
Yeah, but I'm saying I understand, and even now, especially like what you just said with gas prices, like okay, whatever we're gonna do that we're gonna drive, we're gonna put it on one day, and then we're gonna take the trip, and we're gonna take
Exactly.
care of it. And
Yeah.
yeah, you could tell that people now, I mean, whether they want to or not, they're gonna be forced to we got to rethink this. If you're the adults in the
Exactly. It's thinking outside the box. It's pushing
yes,
everybody to do that. And every time we think that we've solved this one thing, then something else is going to come at us. And it's
yes.
just waves right now. The waves are higher than they were before.
Yes, and I know a lot of people. Usually, I see that before stuff would come along, but there was more space and time between things, and I think a lot of people are like, there. It's just been very rapid, a lot of intense changes. And since I'm older, I tell everybody, once upon a time, I lived very happily, and there was only one phone in the house.
Oh, I know.
There was no,
Yep.
no technology as far as a cell phone. And I said, I remember
Exactly.
when the answering machines and the pagers came in on the thing, and then
Well, what
it
I worry about though is that once we are so, and we already are so dependent on the
yes,
cloud,
yeah.
what is one day that is going to get shut off? And then what? What
Then
is
we'll just
everybody
be
going
like, oh my god, I can't.
and they're not people aren't going to know what to do. They're not going to know
Yeah,
how to live.
yes. Well,
So
uh,
that could be a shock too. It's all about shocks, and that's what Aquarius is. It's something that's shocking. So
well, you know what? I think now. Let me ask you: Is when you say we're how long does this? Because like you said, you hear the age of Aquarius. How long is an age supposed to last?
it's a good question. I think it could be many hundreds of
Oh,
years. And yeah, and I don't really believe we're actually in Aquarius. And I don't think we will get there in our lives. It'll be our next lives,
mm-hmm.
because I believe that our souls have different cycles, and
Okay,
we just have to get rid of the old body and get a new one, and then start it all
okay,
over again.
okay,
But and of course, that's my belief. But Aquarius, I think, will probably be maybe, I don't know, 2100, maybe
okay.
2050, something like that. Maybe even longer, but it's very long. I think the Industrial Revolution was, and the years of the invention were that was the cusp there. Then
Okay.
once we got into the 60s and we were going to the moon, and we started to ramp up a little bit.
Sure.
And then, the 80s and everything was more technological. The
Sure.
synthesizer was extremely, in music, extremely
Mm-hmm.
popular. So we started hearing a lot more things that were synthesized, and things became more synthetic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very, very, very slow. We just started, like, what was 2008 when the
Right.
2008 when everybody really started using the internet
Right.
24/7.
Yeah.
So it'll be a while.
Let me ask you, and I've heard, and I don't know this is if this is accurate, that some of the constellations have, in other words, but at the time that the constellations were done, that you have Libra, whatever,
Yeah.
Scorpio, that that in other words that these constellations have shifted so that how you say, well, if you were born between this date and this date, then you're this sign.
Yes.
But
Yes.
that those dates supposedly have shifted because these constellations are not in the same place that they were when they were first designated. Those dates were used. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yes, it is. A fixed star was in a different place.
Mm-hmm.
When Da Vinci was painting, and
Right.
he had a very interesting fixed star. He had the devil in his.
Really?
Yes, and so I was trying to figure out, and it's a wonderful method or channel, astrology, to dig into history, because it makes you more interested, I think, in
Sure.
some cases. And in Da Vinci, I was like, what on earth did he paint something called the devil? Because when you see
Mm-hmm.
a fixed star like that so prevalent, you want to know. And come to find out, he nobody knew that he was homosexual, so
Right.
he had a young painter, a young apprentice.
Yes.
And in Italy, or in Italian, his name everybody knew was like the little devil.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting. But to back to your question, yeah, it's a good question. I go by the calculators they give me today.
Okay.
So if they say Libra is Libra, then
Okay.
it's Libra.
Okay.
But I do think that it's by degree, little by little, it does change. You're right. Mhm.
Okay. So that
Good,
is
good questions.
okay. No, because you hear these things and then you're thinking, well, is it really accurate or is it not accurate? Or if there was a change in the constellation, was it minimal where it really doesn't make a difference? So and the reason I'm going to give you a perfect example. My grandson was born on August 23rd, which I
Mhm.
believe is the dividing one between
The cut.
Leo
Yes. Hmm.
and
Leo and Virgo.
Virgo. And you
Hmm.
always don't know to which way that would go.
You're right.
You see,
Both.
and
Both.
both. Oh,
Oh, absolutely. He'll have a hybrid. He might be very fastidious,
no,
but
that's
he
not
likes
him.
to. No, no, really. So then
No.
he's very strong, and he
Yes, he's
likes to go
very
to the
strong.
gym.
He's very strong.
Likes the gym, likes physical things. Hair, lots of hair.
Well, you know what's really funny? He's one of these guys he's a real blonde, like, blonde eyelashes, blonde
Um,
everything. So he's trying
yeah.
to grow a beard now, and it's like kind of you filling in. So he does have hair, but at the same
Okay.
time, he's not
Okay.
one of these dark-haired guys. So,
Well, Leos they love weights. They love to be strong.
yeah, he's a strong kid,
And,
man. He's a
or they
real
have a strong opinion. There's something very, very strong about them. And that, not to segue into Ted Bundy, but Ted Bundy had some Leo in him where he had superhuman strength.
really.
When he went in and he broke a window to get into somebody's basement apartment, he you wouldn't think
Right,
he's
no.
like the Rock or anything, but he had that superhuman strength. You could
And
see
you
that.
look at him and you think, "Oh, he's just kind of a slender guy."
Yeah, he was extremely strong, and he was also adept at hitting or going to a target and just at the speed of light, able
Mm-hmm.
to just attack.
Okay.
So yeah, some
Let
of
me ask
these.
you, do you do because you mentioned something earlier, and I know that the moment or whatever your birth and whatever you're born, you're born. Do you think that there's any type of familial, how can I say it, effect, positive or negative, that impacts when you're born? Because almost like you said, a multi generational thing.
Yeah, I do. I believe we're all connected. I believe that what's really cool is like I can go into my mother's or my father's birth chart and I
Mm-hmm.
can see who I am to them,
Okay.
um, how I would play out, what I would look like. So it is very much like DNA, where you are destined to play this out in your story, but you're going to have these effects on these other people. So it's all connected, just like
Right.
DNA.
And I'm going down the thing of, like you said earlier, that concept of the bad seed, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, and
Is there something playing out? I don't know whether you want to call it karma or something going on with that family, and this is basically it's almost like, okay, because of what's in your, I don't know,
it could be a
astrological
coincidence.
DNA.
There are different levels. Like the Kennedys is a good example.
God,
I
yeah.
did a blog post on Joseph Sr. and how I think he might have had a family curse and how,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and how it went down. And it could be just because he used his power and authority to do some things potentially during Prohibition,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, and just broke a lot of rules, a lot of universal rules.
Sure.
And when you see 8 degrees, that can mean black magic, and it can also mean a curse. So, and I believe he has 8 degrees, and so do some of his sons
Right.
and people in his family. So, yeah, I do. I think there's a potential for bad seeds, but if you know astrology, you can. I do think that you can change the outcome.
Right. And that's what I'm saying, that in some cases, nature versus nurture versus what your choices are versus, you know,
I
If it's whether to choose the strength of time. If you know about time, then that is your key, and you need to know things. You're going to need to know all the facts about time, and that's really the foundation of what I'm doing.
Let me ask you: if somebody came to you now and said, "I had a baby," so they're going to
Mhm.
give you exact date, time, and you do a chart, would your advice also say, you know what, this person or this baby is going to have, these are their strengths and their weaknesses, so try to steer him away from this
Yes,
towards that?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you have to be careful. Natalie Wood comes to mind when you know, her mother was told by a psychic that she should never go near water,
Mm-hmm.
and then she ends up drowning because she never learned to swim.
Right.
So we have to be really careful about what you say.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it can show certain things where if you let the parents know, they're more accepting of their idiosyncrasies,
Okay.
um, of how they communicate, of how they relate to others.
Okay. Because you know what, I could see people, and I hate to say it, but nowadays, the parents, especially when if you're not planning to have a lot of kids, you want to try to like, they're wanting to plan everything of their
You want to
child's
help them.
life. You want to help
Hmm.
them. You do. You want to make their life easier.
Hmm.
And I tell everybody because I have my own. Despite what your best intentions are when they're babies, as they grow up, they do things that you're like, where'd you get this from? Why are you doing that? So,
Exactly.
uh,
And it's all a learning process. We're all here to
yes,
learn, and unfortunately, many times it's through crisis.
yes,
So
mm-hmm,
it's very difficult sometimes knowing what you know and looking at a child's birth chart, and
yes,
we don't like to say anything ugly, but it
yeah, of
that
course,
the person nobody has a perfect life,
of course
and
not.
so that's you can have the highest of the highs. And one example is Tom Cruise.
Mm-hmm,
He's got more fame than you could ever imagine,
mm-hmm,
but he goes to a film festival and he can't really sit with his family.
sure,
And he doesn't have that fulfillment. So there's always going to be empty holes in your life that you have to live with.
right,
So,
right. The quid pro quo. This is the price of fame for you. You
there's
know,
a price for everything.
right. You can't go down to the corner drugstore and go
No,
buy toothpaste, just or a
get
beer
yourself a
or
phone.
whatever, because you're gonna
Right.
get mobbed.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
exactly.
there's a lot of people out there that say, "Man, I want to be famous. I'll do with it." Yeah, until you're there,
I'll do anything.
and
And
then
then
it's
it's
like,
empty. It's not what they thought.
of course not.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
As far as
sometimes,
happiness, that is.
yeah, sometimes that's the journey. So many of these actresses want so much to be famous, and
Mm-hmm.
then, they have terrible behind the scenes types of scenarios that play out, and who wants those? So,
Yeah, and you were telling me something about that. You had looked at the Amber Heard Johnny Depp thing, and you're thinking that that's not finito yet.
no, I don't think so. I think there's going to be something that comes out about the jury there. I think there might be some things we don't know yet, and
You know what I'm afraid of? I'm going to tell you. I'm afraid that there's going to be other couples out there because I think they got so much coverage out of this. As negative as it was, it's like, man,
Mhm.
this is too much information. I really didn't want to know about this, but
I know.
I see some of these actors where their star is fading or has faded that will somehow say, that's the ticket. That's how I'm going to get 3 or 4 weeks of daily coverage. Let me see what I could do or who I could,
It's very
it's like,
possible. That's very possible. The court reality TV. Yeah.
yes, yes.
I hope not.
Because, I'm going to say there's a portion of them out there that I know that are narcissists that'll, fame at any price. Nothing worse than being forgotten and overlooked. So,
I know. I know.
but we will see. Again, Valerie, thank you so much for my podcast listeners. What is your website address?
Well, thank you for having me on again. And you can find out more information about forensic astrology by going to forensicastrologer.com. And you can also follow me on Instagram at forensic astrologer. And then also on YouTube, you just search forensic astrologer Valerie,
Okay,
and channel will pop up.
perfect. And you said you're working on another book. Are you going to be releasing it this year?
I am. I'm hoping to by the summer.
Okay. And what is that something as far as is it going to be involving crimes or is it a certain methodology you're using?
Yes, the theme is your workplace and
Oh,
how
that's right. I'm so
strong
sorry.
you
Yep.
are. No, no,
I
is that
could
how
see
so many people
people.
are.
I could see people. You know what? People because I think people, even though a lot of the workplace, if you want to call it a Zoom workplace, you still
Mhm.
have to deal with problems as in coworkers and bosses.
A lot of people are having to deal with bullying because of a control problem, and
Mm-hmm.
their bosses are working, long distance,
Yeah.
several states over, and so they need to feel good about themselves by micromanaging and a whole host of other things. But sabotage is unfortunately more common now,
Mm-hmm.
and I just wanted to give some people some insight before they
Yes.
make the first step into that next job.
Well, let me tell you something. The people and once upon a time, and I'm going to use my my old work. Once upon a time, you would have that parent company uh, thing, and people stayed many years, and usually you would get
No
promoted
vice
from
versa.
within.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist. In other words, you could see where you might have a boss who's
Hmm.
maybe you're really good, maybe you're even better than your boss, and your boss is thinking, "Whoa, this person, even though you might never do it, this person is going to overshadow me,
That's,
so I'm gonna."
it's so common too. It's so common.
Yes, yes.
And
People that thing about, man, I can't do that. This is this person's livelihood. There's a lot of people that they don't care about that.
hmm and you can see a lot more than that. You can see if there's shenanigans behind the scenes.
Hmm.
Saw that with Matt Lauer in Ann Curry's chart.
God, that was incredible. It was like, and
Mhm.
you know what? It's I think also it's sad because when that came out, apparently it was like a well-known secret. It
I
was
know.
like everybody knew
Yeah.
about it.
Yep. Everybody knew about it in
Yeah.
the news business. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of things you can see. You can see, if there's going to be women who are jealous of you,
Yes.
or if there's an older woman that might help you, and to stick with that one because
Right.
they'll take you to great heights. So there's good and bad in
Right.
each chart.
That is great. Thank you so much. It has been great to
Thank
speak to you, Valerie.
you.
I'm going to put a link to the credits in the credits of the show directly to your
Perfect.
website. And I want to wish you the best of luck.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank
It has been
you.
great.
All right. I had a lot of fun.
Take care, darling.
Okay. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye. Wow. There we go. Yep. Believe it or not, I had to fall back on Skype because at the last minute, everything went. And you know what? But that's what you learn when you do this work where you have A, B, and C, you have a backup to the backup to the backup, backup. Because let me tell you something. What we were talking about with Valerie as far as technology, it's great, but man, technology can go sideways very easily, very unexpectedly. So yeah. Anyway, guys, I hope you liked this interview. I thought it was fascinating. All right. I mean, I knew that, yeah, that astrology people do it for their birth charts and, it kind of tells you, especially if you can give your, even your birth hour. But I never had thought of it as in being used for this, I mean, I know, yeah, people have done it like on serial killers, obviously, because they can get the information. They can say, you know what, you can see in this person's chart where they ended up being who they were, or that they were going to basically become a serial killer, whatever the case might be. But when she was talking about cases, about victims, I think that's fascinating. In other words, you're using what's available there to try to reconstruct information. Um, and I wish I could have asked her, if, God, I wish I had asked her, like, let's say the thing about the victim. Let's say you get a victim, modern times, so you kind of have an approximate date of when either the person disappeared, got killed, whatever. If once they do that, there's a way to look at the profile of who would have done this to this person, Or is that totally? Maybe you look at the chart and you're saying, okay, well, what if it's a person that's known? I wonder if you looked at that chart and it would say, this is the profile of the person that did this to this person. I wonder if such a thing is possible. Interesting, huh? I wish I forgot to ask her that. But yeah, again, it's fascinating because you think of, I was telling her before we began recording that you hear about ancient times. Sometimes when it was like a child, a royal child, they would do an astrological chart just to see how it looked. Or in some cases, they would try to have the birth occur at a certain date or certain time, whatever, which is kind of hard to do, because they were saying this is a favorable date for the child to be born astrologically. In other words, they knew the importance of the birth date and time, even as far as this is their destiny. In other words, because of their moment of their birth, this could alter their destiny. And the flip side of it is what I was asking her: nature, nurture. How much do we have free will? Okay, how much does our environment have to do with how we? Maybe you might have certain tendencies, but let's say you're brought up in a non-violent household versus a violent household. Let's say you're an A-type personality. And you know who I heard this about? I don't know if God, what was his last name? He's just known as the ice pick murderer. God, my God, what's his last name? He died already. He passed away, and he was, he had like a beard, a goatee, big guy. His name escapes me. It'll come to me, of course, when I'm done here. But he ended up, he was killing people. He was like a hitman for the mafia, but he was killing people along the way too, just people that got in his way. And one time I was reading that ice pick guy, Iceman. Let me see. And serial killer. I hate it when I cannot remember. Richard Kuklinski. There we go. Thank you, Marlene. Okay. Richard Kuklinski. I had read something that he was like an A-type personality. All right. But they were talking about if you have an A-type personality but's born into a violent household, which apparently he was. He lived and was in a violent household. He grew up. His father, you name it. Then you get this A-type personality then produces a Kuklinski, an Iceman, a pathological killer, who this guy had no qualms about killing somebody. I think there was one time I read that he was traveling down south somewhere and some guys in a van. I don't think they ran him off the road, or they got in front of him. One of those deals. Maybe they did run. But it was just way back. And he ended up killing them. And for years, for a couple of decades or more, it was like 3 teenagers or 3 young men that were in a van. He killed them. Nobody could figure out who killed these guys or why. Because, of course, this was a stranger on stranger thing. And he was passing through and they were just like, what happened? And I guess it was in the middle of nowhere. It wasn't like in a city. It was like out in the road somewhere in the back country in Georgia. Something like that, if I remember correctly. And later on, they finally, I think after he was arrested, that he talked about it. Because again, he lived up in the Northeast. And they were explaining that because of his personality he was born with, but because of the environment, his family environment that he grew up in, it just made him into what he was, that violent. But then you think, okay, what Valerie's talking about, was that written in the stars for him to begin with, as far as his birth date? Okay, or could there have been always an alternative, even if he would have been born within this really dysfunctional family setting, but the date, his birth date, would have been different from what it was? Would he still have been, I don't know, how can I say, would he have still been maybe a miserable SOB but not have gone on to kill people? It's inevitable that, I mean, if you go into and you read about his background, it was pretty horrible. And I think his brother, he threw a kid off a roof. I mean, this was messed up big time. Or was he just, or was that moment of his birth slated to be because that was his destiny? That's a big question mark, a real big question mark. Or that you think, okay, you're born 1 or 2 hours later. Will that make all the difference in between what is your destiny or what kind of person you end up being? Food for thought, right? Food for thought. So, yeah, let me tell you something. That's a lot of thinking there as far as how much we think we have free will, or how much, when you say you make certain decisions, that they take you certain places, how much is it really your free will, or how much is it your destiny? That's what, you come to the fork in the road and you're thinking, okay, this is my choice. I'm going to the left or right. And your destiny was you were going to go the right hand no matter what, even though you think you're making a choice at that point. Or is it something that because you make that choice, you delay it, something that was going to happen, good or bad? There's people sometimes that will say, and I've experienced it myself. Let's say a job. Let's go down the road. You get a job, and you want a certain job or whatever in a certain field, and you just can't get it, and you end up taking another job somewhere else because you're like, I gotta need a job, and then while you're at that other job, that you're not so thrilled with, you down the road, basically, you have a way of getting the job that you wanted to begin with. But in other words, unless you would have taken that first job that you weren't really thrilled with, you were never going to get that opportunity to go to that other job or meet the person that would open a door for you. You see what I'm saying? Like, you have to do this first thing, and then this will lead to something that you wanted, that if you had tried to go without it, you would never. Let's say that you said, you know what, this sucky job, I don't take it. If I can't have that one that I want, forget it. Without you knowing that, take the sucky job, because that's going to be your entrance into what you want, or meeting the person that's going to give you a hand up. I mean, it could go, what is it, that multiverse thing, like Doctor Strange, different variables of what could play out. But then, if you listen to what Valerie said, not really. Interesting. I'm still kind of like, All right, guys, I hope you like this interview. Please come back. I have a lot of great guests coming on, and I know you're going to like them. Some are new guests, like Valerie. Others are people that have been here before, but it's been a few years, and a lot of things have happened between, God knows. And we'll talk about all that interesting stuff. And again, if you have any suggestions for topics, for guests, for anything, shoot me an email at Marlene@MiamiGhostChronicles.com, and I will make sure to take it up. So see you soon, and until then, remember, you are wonderful. Thank you so much for coming and spending this time with me. Take care.